Good afternoon, everyone. I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including our near neighbors, the Shannon First Nation and the South First Nation. Welcome to the special finance meeting of December 7th, 2023. Please have your cell phones turned off during the meeting. So committee, we have one addition to the agenda, which is pink, and we can put that under reports before adjournment. Any other additions or changes? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve, please? By Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Gray. Thank you. Okay, so for public participation, I welcome to the public to the mic. When you speak at the mic, I ask you to be respectful in your presentation to our council, our staff, and the visitors in the gallery this afternoon. Anybody like to speak at this time? Please state your name and the street in which you live.
Good afternoon, committee. Kiara Kahakawilla, Perry Crossroads. So in light of the recent announcement of the hiring of a new CAO, I have a couple of questions in regards to this current staff report on your budget, which is now sitting at 14% increase. And there's a few things that I think may not necessarily have been taken into consideration given the hiring. So from my experience in the past of being part of a hiring process, for a CAO, there's a couple of things. I know that there's an expectation in the current budget for the administrative salaries in regards to the cost of the new hire and his salary. Is that full potential realized in this proposal as it is right now? Insofar as, I guess a direct question would be, what was he offered as his salary? And while I realize it's a staff salary, it is not an in-camera information because salaries is public knowledge. What was he offered for moving expenses? Coming from Barrier is not going to be cheap, so that needs to be considered in your budget deliberations as well as transition costs. So you've got several big key things that are on the move right now in the municipality that have been being taken care of by your current interim CAO. So that transition period is going to take a particular amount of time for him to get up to speed on the issues that you're currently facing here in Metchosin. And obviously some transition time for your current acting CAO to transition back to a CFO position or whatever it is that you decide to offer her. So those are my questions. I know that I've been hearing quite a bit about concerns about tax increase. We have a lot of residents here in Metchosin who are on fixed incomes. With the cost of everything going up, taxes is a top priority in a lot of people's minds, and being able to stay here in Metchosin and being able to afford living here. So you all campaigned on being fiscally responsible. And while I personally don't feel that hiring a new CAO in that position was needed, I think you could have shaved off about 5 or 6% of what is currently being proposed in this budget by not hiring an additional top-end staff person. The decision has been made. Congratulations on that. But now there is the repercussions of what that will imply to the taxpayers here in Metchosin. And they are expecting to understand the ramifications of what that hire is going to cost them in its entirety.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good afternoon, Nicole Shukin, Levon Road resident. I just want to say that I do respect Council's decision to hire a permanent CAO. I do think Metchosin is at a crossroads. There are pressures on every border. We have housing initiatives coming out from the province that have never been seen before. And I think it's unfair to split one person across two intense top-end staff roles. So I'm really glad we're going to have Ms. Tarnowski overseeing finances and fiscal responsibility, and also have a dedicated permanent CAO. But having said that, I do realize like nobody likes to see taxes increase. And one suggestion I have for offsetting the hire and the tax increase that comes with that is to revisit like the roads budget. And I talked about this a little bit last year. I'm kind of fixated on roads. And I'm hoping the Chair of Environment and Natural Areas might agree with me that, it might be time for some progressive thinking around ditching and shouldering particularly. This time last year, up Le Bon Road, we had shouldering done. And number one, it didn't last very long, like a couple of weeks before trucks sort of, washed it away or slouted it off the road. And number two, it was full of like plastics and junk. So I'm really worried that we're actually paying to bring like microplastics and crushed, material that could contain a lot of invasives and, spreading them around the roads and shoulders and machosen. And I think it's sensible to allocate $20,000 to the rabbits, to dealing annually with rabbits and that invasive. But I also think, thinking about the shoulders and how invasives could be spread through the shouldering practices, and also maybe thinking about like ditching and using bioswales, thinking in terms of green infrastructure and how the use of bioswales in ditches could, do that work of filtering some of the tire tread that the Bilston Watershed Habitat Protection Association has said is really so deadly and can be kind of like filtered by natural plantings and sort of green ditches. So anyway, I hope that you might be able to offset the tax increase by making some significant cuts to the roads budget. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barb Sawatsky, Kavir Road. I didn't come to beat on my drum, I promise. But what I would like you to do is to really reconsider some of the fuzzy things that you budget for. When I look at, and I'm sure it was lots of fun dancing in the dark around the band shell, but now I understand there's going to be 2 volunteer appreciation nights. It costs money, and hiring consultants where they're not needed costs money. And contributing to some of the grants, such as the movie industry, I think that you could do an awful lot of shaving down. Instead of having volunteer appreciation, maybe show your appreciation to people in the community by painting lines on the road so that we can see them at night when it's dark and wet. And think of more safety issues around the community. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. I just want you to get rid of some of the fuzzy stuff in your budget.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I think you stole my comments. Anyway, Avril, you'll come. I have to agree, as soon as I saw the 2 planned appreciation days, I'm not in favor of that at all. The district gives $10,000 to Machosen Day. You do the fire hall fireworks, pancake breakfast. There's lots given to the people. I know it's a tiny bit of amount, but that's a good start. Dump the $700. And if you need a really big cut, sell the school. It's the white elephant right now. Thanks.
Thank you.
Tamara Ballard, Boot Road. Is there going to be an opportunity for public input after for questions to be answered? I didn't see that on the agenda.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda today, but we'll see how the process goes. That's what we have been doing in the past.
Right.
We'll see how today goes.
So should I wait to ask questions? Because that actually answers.
Now's a good time to ask.
Okay.
Or to present.
Okay. So my first question is the same question I had last week of other. So it's on page 9. under 2110-5300. It's the 6308 for other expenses for council other. I was told to go to page 9 and it would explain, but it doesn't explain it. Am I moving along?
Yes, keep going.
Okay, so number 2 is for same page, 2122, 2220, as well as 2122-2701. So the legal fees and the FOIs. What has caused such big increases on those? Is it the same people asking for the same information? Is it separate? Just curious. And here is page 17 of building department. So we have here contracted services at $5,000 budgeted. Year to date, we're at $12,479. We've spent double the budgeted allotted money, and I was wondering what that was for. On page 21, transportation services. Down to other transportation, we have bridge expense salaries at $1,125. We have bridge expense vehicle costs at $135. I was wondering what are those for? As well as, same line, we have $5,000 for bridge inspections. So my question is that for all bridges in Metchosin to be inspected, or has this money been allocated specifically for Flush Road? And finally here on page, oh sorry, not finally, 27, the school site. On the front page of the report, it says that school fees, leasing fees amount of $11,300. And my question is it seems here that we have revenue coming in for other rents at $57,335, and I'm curious as to why we're being taxed to have a leasing agent fee when shouldn't the school be paying for itself out of that money? As well as right above there, it's the Metchosin Arts and Cultural rent recommended. Is that money that we're actually receiving from MACA? Is that MACA? And lastly here, on the last page, so 32, it says under school, oh no, wrong page, sorry. It's page 31, sorry. So general administration, it says other again at $19,617. Our taxes have gone up 0.4 or 54% for that, with no explanation of what other is. So I'd like to have answers to my questions if I would get this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Sorry, I have one more thing. I forgot something. It was about to do with the volunteer appreciation. Can't remember where it was. But I do not think that we should be increasing it to $1,500 or to $1,400. $700 is enough, I think. It is a 0.02%, which isn't much, but every penny counts when your taxes are going up. So I am opposed to the increase.
Thank you. Okay, committee. On to reports. So on page 3 we have staff report, and I'll turn this over to Ms. Charnowski to start us off, please.
Other questions? Is it on? Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Councilor Donaldson. So this report, there's a couple of points that I'd like to bring your attention to. The first one is really a summary of all the requests that were made from our previous meeting. You will see that that's all summarized on pages 31 and 32. So particularly those increases on points 1 and 2 is just nomenclature of changing the name from annual tax increase required to cumulative, changing the name on the summary page. So we have one line that says annual tax increase, and then the second line that says cumulative increase, so that we know all the cumulative increases for 5 years in total. So that's the difference. That seems to be causing a little bit of confusion previously. So that's the first change that I've noted on my report. On point number 3, under transportation services, we've added $25,000 for road safety. So it's nothing particular, but just all related to road safety initiatives. Point number 4, we will be creating a new GL just to split out the difference between electronic signage and your regular signage, because understandably electronic signage, as wonderful as they are more expensive to maintain and repair. So it just would be nice for us to be able to track the signage. And just for your information, for 2023, almost half of the actual spent was spent on electronic signage. So it's about $15,000. On change number 5, it's really just an in and out. So we are assuming that if we receive the $75,000 grant, we will be spending that on active transportation plan. So if we don't get the grant, obviously, we're not going to spend that money associated with the plan. The $5,000 for the bridge inspection, that was one of the questions that was brought up. It is for all the bridges. So as a preventive measure, we inspect the bridges every 2 years. The Robert management, I think it's being acknowledged that it is a serious invasive issue in the community. So in an attempt to get a better hold of it, so we are proposing to increase the budget by $10,000, which will allow us to do 2 rounds of management. On point number 8 is just a reallocation. Initially, we had $11,300 for the line of leasing agent fees. So that has just been moved to other contracting services because we realized that there are a lot of expenses for the school which have to be budgeted for. So just running off the top of my head, and it's by no means comprehensive, is we need somebody to do snow removal, we need somebody to do salting, we need somebody to do snow removal for the parking lot. We need somebody to do maintenance, regular maintenance checks. We need somebody to check out the space when the gym's being rented, before the gym's rented, after the gym's rented. By no means exhaustive. So those are the things that we have to think about. And it's $10,000 allocated right now, and I'm going to suggest that is nowhere close to being sufficient for running the school that it should be properly run, given now that we will be renting out the school. First and foremost, the safety of the users has to be prime objective for us. Okay, so number 8 is just another simple renaming of, instead of school capital repayment, it is now school capital reserve transfers. And then point number 10, which has been brought up by several members of the public before, is to increase the appreciation event to 2, so by increasing it by $700. Another point that I would like to mention is that this year, unfortunately, we did not have the opportunity to review our strategic priorities, work plan, or revise the work plan as we go. had we had the opportunity to do that, we will be going to the budget discussion with some ideas of the initiatives and projects that council would wish to carry out. So what the process is for this year is we are developing the projects as we go, which obviously is not an ideal situation to be developing a budget. Yeah, so that's it for the my bit that I would like to just bring to the committee's attention.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. So one of the things I wanted to say to clarify to a lot of comments both last year and this year of the asks and how much the budget is, etc. These budget deliberations will go on for a couple of months. There are different steps and stages in that process. And I want to say that I am not the author of this document, nor is this council. I believe that it's a collective. It does come from staff. It comes from a lot of asks from the community. It also comes from operation costs and expenses that we have not a lot of control over, like hydro and keeping the doors open for business and such. So bear with us and be patient. There's a lot to go through and to understand and to deliberate. Each year there's different things coming at us. So I just want to say that to start off with. I also want to say that Councillor Shukin is online with us. So welcome, Councillor Shukin. Sorry I didn't acknowledge you right at the very beginning, but we have not forgotten that you're there. So I'd like the committee to turn to the last page first, just because it's a summary, and I think that'll help us go through the various sections. Simply because these are the budget increases that we're facing this year. So this question has come up more than once, so I'm going to ask Ms. Tarnowski to verify the definition of what council increases are, what this number is.
So the district of Chosen has a policy that permits council remuneration to be increased in accordance with the CPI, which is Consumer Price Index of the Greater Victoria area. So that's the policy that the district has been implementing and putting in place. So it's a increase according to the policy that's existing.
Okay, and then the next one here where it's got the FOI contractor, and we'll start with that one first, and then the legal fees, which is something that is in various different departments. And as much as I understand it, perhaps you can explain to the public the allocation of these in our different departments.
So the FOI is only allocated to general government. There's only one line item for FOI, and it is just that it is to engage a contractor to handle the FOI requests that the district, I would say, for at least the past 2 years, because that's as far back as I can remember in terms of my time being here, is staff have just been inundated with FOI requests. Initially, how we started out the approach to handling FOI requests was to have a staff member do it internally, and that staff member pretty much spent quarter of her total working hours handling FOI requests. So going forward, I think the decision was made in 2021 to engage an external contractor. So the expenses that you see for FOI related expenses is only for what we pay to the contractor, and that does not include the staff time that is still necessary to vet to do the search of the documents and to vet the collected documents, and just so to be in contact and a discussion with the FOI contractor. So that's something really important for the committee and council and the public to be aware that the FOI is strictly just for the contractor.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Just on that one, I think it's an interesting bellwether. So I'm looking at the numbers in 2023. We dropped the budget down to $10,000, thinking that, heck, we're going to be transparent and open. And now we see that we have spent a year to date, 2023, $18,900 and change. And we're kind of returning back to what the previous council, spent $25,000 a year. So it sort of gives a lie to the transparency and openness that we profess. I think this is a good way of measuring how open and transparent we are. We can look at that number as the years go by and see if we do better in terms of informing the public of important issues. It's not that people shouldn't, properly apply for FOI, but I think we're failing a little bit as a council in terms of that issue if people are requiring to look so much to FOI rather than hear what we have to say and say, well, that's reasonable, let's go with that. So let's try a little bit harder than that. I don't know if we can change that budget number. We pretty much have to have the money there because it's a legitimate act that our residents engage in to seek FOI, and we need the money to pay for it. But maybe if we can be better in our transparency and openness, that number could come down next year. We'll see.
Thank you for those comments, and one thing I want to add to that is a lot of the FOIs are not done just in this last year, they're done for history of the last number of years. So there will be probably more of that to come, we don't know, so it's a great idea to have that on the books as a continuum. Okay, and then the next department is the fire department. The wage increases, I suspect that's related to union or no?
It's both union and
okay. Right. Okay, and we see we've got a new position being requested this year. We have seen this asked before, but far less cost. This looks like it's more permanent, which would involve a benefit package, pensions, and those sorts of things. So those are things that we'll be deliberating over as we go through the spreadsheet. Firefighter allowance was explained last time with the call-outs and the increase per hour on that. Training costs are probably always going up. So I did go back and look at last year, and it looks like it's a continuum to keep adding on to the training. We do pay 100% of the training of all of our volunteers. Okay, and then the police, that's contracted stuff, so we don't really have a choice to change too much there. That's fixed. And the same with the next two departments. Those are all fixed costs. Public Works, the engineer for $38,400. This is a new contract starting in July. Can we have some explanation on that, Ms. Charleski, please?
So the additional expense of almost $40,000 is for the retirement of our current engineer. Mid-Chosen has been very, very fortunate to enjoy a very, very low contracted rate for the whole duration that Mr. Hurley has been here. So he is looking to retire next June. What that means is that we are looking at a contracted rate for external engineering personnel of approximately 2.5 times more what is being charged right now. So the hourly rate that was used to develop this budget is what I refer to as blended rate. I do recognize that Mid-Chosen really, up until this point, and I don't foresee that coming in the future, is we do not need a PNG to sign up. We don't sign up or seal any drawings. So a little bit of a change in direction in the sense that we will be looking to hire an engineering technician who can fulfill the duties that are more fitting for Mid-Chosen's needs, and then just consulting with the senior engineers on an as-needed basis. So with that in mind, the rate that was used, the hourly rate that was used for this budget was $200 an hour.
And so this is just a breakout for this particular department, because we do use that engineer contractor for other business when they come in per week, or are they just focused on public works?
No, because there's a little bit allocation in roads.
Okay, thank you. And the doggy do collection, this is, oh, sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Just on that question, you know, in my view, we've suffered terribly around issues around the, well, in particular around the detention pond, with not having enough engineering time. We have the $20,000 we budgeted last year, which lots of it's still available in terms of paying the next layer that we've got going. But through the chair, are we adding engineering time here, or is this simply the same 1 day a week type level of service?
It's the same as 1 day a week, the rate has gone up considerably.
So I'm I mean, the numbers are getting kind of high here, so it's a bit problematic, but this is an area where we've heard an awful lot here at the council table from the lack of resources to deal with this question. So, and no negative comment about administration, but rather I think we've shortchanged you somewhat in this department, and it may be one we need to come back to in terms of the hours required if we carry on with, if we continue to own the buffer and need to be working on these issues.
Okay, and the next one, the doggy do. So this came from, well, we originally had started 2 years ago with the dog working group with the rewriting of the animal bylaw, recommendations made to council of the day, and I think you can pick up from there, Ms. Tarnowski, as to those recommendations have now turned into collecting the dog do.
Right. So where we're at with that is that 2 receptacles have been installed. And it has probably been in use for definitely less than a month. So what the crew is reporting to me is even during this low season, the receptacle fills up in about between 5 to 6 days. So they're making 1 trip to Heartland on this low season. But caveat on that is it is not all dog feces. Half of it is other garbage. They're also seeing garbage being placed at the on the ground by the pole. So it's not just putting it in the receptacle. Garbage is being left at the bottom of the receptacle. So I couldn't even imagine, couldn't even guess what the frequency is going to be during the summer months, given the fact that we do not want the doggy feces to be sitting there for days on end.
Yes, Councillor Gray.
And through the chair, how many sites do we have the receptacles at the moment?
Just 2.
So
That's a big chunk of change on that one.
And one of
Councillor
the...
John?
Yes, Councillor Shukin.
Hi, thanks very much. I had connected with Patty Whitehouse about signage, but I was of the understanding, and forgive me if I missed this, that the direction that we were going to take in terms of signage for this issue, dog do, was more along the lines of take your dog do with you. That was my understanding of where we were going. And I find it alarming that this is the cost that we're thinking we're going to incur for this particular issue. And Councillor Donaldson, am I wrong in that? Was the dog working group, you know, what were their recommendations to create these receptacles and service them?
No, you're quite right. So when I was a citizen on that committee, one of the things that I was advocating for was leave no trace and have more of an educational campaign on that. However, a decision was made, and not from this council, but to go ahead with this as and I believe we have documentation in the form of minutes on that decision. Is that correct, Ms. Hanson?
I'm not sure if it's in the minutes, but
Okay.
it was through discussions with Mayor Little
Okay.
and Patty Whitehouse. Yeah.
Okay, so so back to your query, Mr. Shukin, it was, or Councillor Shukin, certainly Leave No Trace has a better budget sound to it, but right now the decision's been made to do this, and I suspect we could try it for an interim. I don't think this is sustainable at this cost. And the reason it has to go out to Heartland is because of there are no garbage companies that actually will take dog feces.
Yeah, no, for sure, and there's good reasons for that. My own hope is that we don't expand until we have a sense of how often this is and how much this is actually going to cost us.
I agree. Councillor Gray.
We'll probably come to it before the end of the day, but we're going to be talking about presumably how we manage the buffer lands. And if this is any indication of the kind of dollars that we'd be spending, it's relevant to know that. My concern here, though, is if it's Mayor Little and Patty Whitehouse who made the decision, that's not really at the right level of government here. We should have passed the information to staff, and then maybe we wouldn't be paying this amount of money. $27,000 seems like a lot. I guess we're in for the $12,000 for signage, but I don't know if we want to continue with the canisters even now without a decision at the staff level, or how we made this happen.
Well, as neither of those individuals are in the room to defend themselves, I would suggest that we find documentation on it first before we go down that route. And,
sure, I wasn't meaning that people need to defend themselves, rather just paying attention to the numbers here, what we do, and if the decision is made, who makes that decision.
Sorry, just to clarify, it was discussions between, like back and forth discussions between staff during our meetings with Mayor Little, and then going back to Patty, and also the CRD, because they were wanting to, originally the CRD to place the garbage cans, but they don't do that. So then it just led into several different back and forth discussions.
Yeah, so discussions, but nothing affirmative. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. I don't have any other highlights on this section. Committee, any comments on page 31 or 32?
I have a question or two.
Yes, Councillor Shukin.
Thank you very much, Councillor Donaldson. And through you to Ms. Tarnowski, you had mentioned, I'm speaking about the Active Transportation Grant and Program, and I just want to get some clarity on this. And I need to begin by saying I'm in favor of the project, but I want to just get a sense about cost. You said this was an in and out cost, and I'm wondering if that I just didn't strike me as quite what I thought it was, because yes, we definitely get the grant itself is a matching grant. It doesn't reimburse you for the money spent, as I understand it. So if we got $75,000 and agreed to go with that, I think we also have to spend $75,000. I mean, there's a value that comes with that if that's the case, but I think we have to spend that if, again, matching grant. So, sorry, I just was hoping for some clarity on that.
Go ahead. Cheryl? Sure.
Yeah, I can probably respond to that one. The grant is the total cost is estimated from Urban Systems to do a plan would be $75,000. So that's what we put in as the total cost. The province would match half of that. So then the municipality would be responsible for the other half. But what I understand is there's also a possibility that remaining half, the municipal responsibility, we could probably get out of the climate action plan. However, if we do get awarded the grant, the municipality doesn't have to accept it. If we decide at the time that we can't find the other half of the funding, we can still always not take the grant if we feel it's going to be too big a hit on the public. The reason for the grant is that down the road, if we have a plan, then that allows us to apply for other grants, which other municipalities have been, getting in the amounts of, even $1 million for SUC to put in like bike lanes and things like that. So So that's what it's for, but the grant is actually a matching grant, which would be whatever half of $75,000 is.
37.5.
37.5, thank you.
If I may add to that, so to your point, Councillor, about using the climate action funding from the province. So this is year 2 that the province has changed the funding for climate initiatives. Currently, we're similar to some other municipalities in the sense that there has been no plan to spend the money. So in terms of from the province's perspective, they don't like to see that. They don't like to see us putting all the money in a reserve. They are encouraging us strongly to develop plans to spend the money. So that definitely is a source of revenue for the active transportation plan.
Okay, so, and the way it is right now, it appears to be almost revenue neutral because it's indicated as revenue, and then there's also the $75,000 allocation. Like in terms of the budget itself, it seems to balance itself out. Is that correct?
Correct, because as Councillor Abbott indicated, that one of the sources we could spend from the climate initiative reserve. Another source that we could spend, which I know has not been done before, is the gas tax grant that we received as well.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. I have one other question.
Go ahead.
So in regards to the the new position for the fire department, I'm sorry, I've lost it now as to how much that's. I think it's allocated at $65,000.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and when are we? I'm just wondering what the role. I'm trying to be mindful of the role of council in terms of governance versus administration, but I still feel it would be interesting to get an understanding of what this position does. And I guess, but my question too is, when are we expecting this position might start? Close to the beginning of the year, or do we know that?
So that's a guesstimate for a full year's wages at a pretty standard QB wages rate. So right now the full 65,000 change is a full year.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. I am going to just, I want to echo what Councillor Gray said about, in terms of the engineer, I continue to believe that we as a district are significantly under-resourced, and I very much welcome the arrival of a new CAO to help fill out our complement, and the fact that we will have a full-time finance person and also a leader in the district. I believe that we are going to find ourselves needing more engineering expertise as we move along. I just have a hard time kind of thinking about what that might be or how best to allocate that. In terms of the detention pond, we still have what I believe to be almost the full amount that has not been allocated to the, whether it's a qualified environmental professional or an engineer, in terms of advice that we might get for the detention pond. So as much as I feel like I would like to bump up the capacity and the resource ability, if you will, of the district, I'm not sure what to do right at this moment with the engineering fees. So, but I appreciate Councillor Gray raising this. I also, I will say, I also support the addition of the planner and time for that person, because we are going to see that there is likely costs associated with the provincial housing initiative that we have to address in the coming year.
Yeah, good points. I agree. Councillor Gray, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just to say the $20,000 budgeted last year, that's helping us out with the hydrologist and qualified professional. That was a one-time money. So just to understand that. It'll be moving to this year, carry it over, but it's one time.
You're correct, and we only spent 2,000 of that, so there's quite a few entries in last year's budget that have not been spent, so a lot of things will be carried over. Any other comments on this this section of the budget. Councillor.
Well, one thing that's not in here is someone to manage or be in charge of maintenance and management of the school, as far as bookings and overseeing the general maintenance. So I don't know. We're going to have to look at that this year and start and plan for it in the budget, because it's just is something that just is absolutely necessary.
Yes, I believe you're quite right. There's a lot of unknowns with the school at the moment, and to what level of staffing we need is also an unknown. Certainly we're facing some infrastructure concerns with the site as well, so those are things that seem to be creeping up on us unexpectedly. Okay, so if we can turn to page 9 and we can go through the sections of this budget. This will be the general government page.
Councillor Donaldson, sorry, with that brief pause, I have to apologize to everybody, but I have to leave at the top of the hour. So
Okay,
we'll still have quorum, but I do have to depart.
okay, thank you. Okay, so committee, on this page, anybody have anything on here that they would like to discuss on this page? Starting off with expenditures under legislative services. Yeah, I have one line item here I'd like some clarity on, and that is under legislative services, the line 2481, which is travel and conferences. I believe that this was an allocation for council, and there was a number of conferences that were offered up this year, 2 and then 911 in Vancouver. 19,000 of the 35 were budgeted for. I suspect that's going to be considerably lower this year, as one of those conferences is in Victoria, so there are no travel costs to speak of, and certainly no overnight stays. So that may change.
Which conference are you referring to?
AVIC. Yeah, UBCM will be in Vancouver again, but AVIC's in Victoria. So it still may be 20,000 or less, but we do have it earmarked for 35,000. I suspect it will be much less than that. There was a question about council other here. I think you did answer, is that correct, earlier?
So my question is, does committee wish for that amount to be reduced?
I would suggest that it be reduced.
Yeah, and I would support that as well. And it strikes me that we've likely had all the expenses come in for travel and conferences, I would think.
I can't say for certain, because some of the claims may be delayed, but I can't say for certain.
Okay.
Councillor Epp and then Councillor Gray.
I think I just would comment that, given the tax increase and the increases we're looking at in all kinds of places and things that aren't even on here yet, I really think that, I think council needs to focus on the chosen. I think spending the amount of money that it costs to go to Vancouver to a conference is out of line, at least in this coming year, while we're really dealing with a lot.
And Councillor Gray?
Yeah, the same point really as I made last year, which is that I don't think we all need to attend these meetings. If the mayor attends and one other councillor, I think that's more than adequate for representation of such a small district. And one step further, Councillor Epp is suggesting we don't really need to attend at all.
Okay, so I just want to say, as a person in her first year of the local governance, it was a great benefit for myself to attend. I do know that I will likely not go to UBCM this year, and AVIC is just here in Victoria, so I would probably go to that. It's only 2 days. But I would suggest that we reduce this 35,000, which was, I think it was, yeah, it was 35 last year, to 15,000. Committee, what do you say?
I would be supportive of that.
Anyone else?
I will say that I believe that going to a conference like UBCM does have value for us. It does open your horizons much beyond, you know, the community that we serve, but I think that serves our community as well. And given that, like, if you look at total compensation for this council, all 5 of us, it's just above $100,000 for all 5 of us. So if there's benefits that may come from the conferences, that's a really small price to pay when you see the amount of time and the actual compensation provided to council. Still, I think we can reduce it, and actually, even if we were to go to UBCM, there's probably ways of reducing some of those costs as well. So
There certainly are, shared accommodation, only a few days, those sorts of things. What I will say is there was great benefit in us attending these conferences, and one of those more outstanding things that we as a full council did was draft together resolutions. And we were successful in that, and I thank Councillor Shukin for actually doing those presentations at both AVIC and UBCM, that those resolutions were accepted by our colleagues, and it went as far up to the province now, so it's in the hands of the province, so it wasn't all for naught. Okay, so are we in agreement that this could be reduced to 15? We will revisit this this budget again at the next meeting in January, so we can reduce again if we see fit.
I would be in support.
Okay. Councillor Gray?
Sure. The other way to do this would be to say that we're sending 2 people to Vancouver, and then we can allow staff to figure out what the dollar value is. I'm not clear on what it costs to send a person here and there. I'm not really big on looking at all these numbers, to be honest. I'd rather talk about what are we intending to do. So that's why I would say, well, I don't know if 15,000 is the right number. If we're sending, say we're sending 5 people, maybe 15,000 is not enough. So it's more the question, what do we want to do? And then from that, we can let our CFO figure out what the dollars are that would attend with it. I'll probably be repeating this throughout the day. Are we planning on doing that? Are we just going to walk through all these numbers? Is that the idea for today?
Well, I would like to do them in chunks. I'm just saying this is one that stands out for me. I asked everybody else and no one jumped up. So if you want to do the whole page and, you know, if there's something specific that jumps out. But I asked the question, I didn't get that.
What was the question?
Was there anything on this page? And I started by, because there was nothing in response, that one of the things I wanted clarity on was the travel and conferences.
Right.
Based on year-to-date and what we're looking at for 2024.
Fair enough. I mean, if
we don't want to make any resolutions and just stay within Machosen and be quiet with our voice, we can do that too and stay home.
Well, I've spoken already about sending 2 people, which would get resolutions there. I'm hoping we'll put resolutions both to AVIC and UBCM this year again. That the representation is useful. I was just talking about reducing the number of people. This isn't about what happened last year. This is about what are we doing this year. Well, I spoke about it last year, I spoke about it this year. There's a certain utility. It's fun for people to go, and it's interesting, and you expand horizons, as we've heard. And we got resolutions through. So it's just a question of, are we looking at this number, which I have no idea went into, I mean, I guess I could figure out, do all the calculations, but I don't know 15,000 is the right number. If we send 2 people, great. If we're sending 3 people, let's budget for that. So I'm kind of at that idea of what's the service we want to get, and then what the numbers would follow.
I follow what you're saying, and the fact that we don't have any of the numbers yet from these different conferences, it's a ballpark. Mayor Little, welcome to the meeting. Is there anything you'd like to say about this?
Yeah, sorry I was late. Yeah, I think conferences are quite useful. There are ways of reducing cost. Two of the meetings in Nanaimo, I stayed at family's place, so there wasn't any cost for food accommodation to the district. So there are ways of reducing that. I think it is a perk for council members to go there. The remuneration that we receive is not very high, and it's really good to get out of the community and see what other people are doing and what their challenges are. So as I am with staff, I'm in favor of professional development. I think it's good for everybody, and not just two members. I think it's good for everybody to have that ability to interact with colleagues throughout the province.
Councillor Donaldson, thank you very much. I do have to sign off right now. So once again, I support this being dropped down to the figure you said. I think it was 15. So, but thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Safe travels.
Take care, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, support tentatively dropping it down to 15 and possibly adjusting it when we get some more concise figures.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything else, committee, that you'd like to discuss on this page, or the general government in general?
Yeah, we heard from Tamara Ballard was interested in what is council other. Don't know if we would have an answer for that today, but we could have it for the next meeting.
I do. So council others, I know for certain that one of the charges that's being charged to that account is for meals that's being brought in for council meetings. And other than that, I obviously don't remember every item that's being charged to that, but all in all to say that any expenses that do not fit in the other categories are captured in that particular GL.
Thank you, that's good to know. It sounds like it's a bit of a catch-all then. Okay. Okay, the next one there that's been brought up by the public is the volunteer appreciation. And we went from having one presentation to two. Last year we had incredible feedback on having an outdoor concert, and it was open to everyone that was willing to come, even those who have not in the past been actively or at all volunteering. So it was great to come out for an outdoor concert, picnic, whatever, what have you. So the query that we've heard from our public so far is, do we really need to have this cost of two of these events and at a 0.02% increase per event? Mayor Lily?
Yeah, there was a lot of good feedback from the appreciation concert. We haven't done anything for a number of years, at least 4 years, for volunteers. We often, when we're talking about our community, we talk about the volunteers, and I think it's important that we recognize them. There were people that weren't able to make that event, and they said, well, it would have been better to do it last month. So the thought is that if we have it twice in the summer, once in July and once in August, the people that can't make it in August will be able to make it in July. I just think it's really important that we recognize the volunteers. This was an idea that I had. It went off without a hitch, and we received a lot of letters and a lot of people saying that it was a great event, and I'd like to see it happen again next year, if possible, twice.
Okay. The one thing that's the difference between this event and other events is volunteers aren't actually facilitating this one, whereas we're pulling volunteers, well, I'll get to that one in a minute, but we're pulling volunteers from all aspects of this community to put on the Chosen Community Day, and we don't have enough volunteers for that. But this event, the people that actually helped us out with this were our firefighters. And that we do appreciate, but really I would like to see this not having them do it, but them to come out and enjoy it with their families as well. And turn it over more that people bring their picnics. We don't provide food, anything, just the entertainment of an outdoor, whether it's a talent show or whatever, similar to what other communities do in their parks during market days or whatever. So I would prefer to see this not be facilitated by volunteers, but for the community to come together. That has nothing to do with the numbers. That's just a different idea on it, but it is not at all compared to Machosen Day where it's volunteers doing the work. Councillor, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I recognize that, it's nice to have paid performers, and so that all volunteers of all types can enjoy the event. But I do think that there's a lot of talented people in the community that are happy to play out at things and perform because that's something they really enjoy doing, and that would do it for free. So I think maybe one event where we have paid performers, but maybe if we wanted to have a second one, maybe it would be we could check the community to see who'd like to come out to put on a show.
Okay, some good ideas. Okay, so anything else on this page that anyone would like to speak about? Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned about the legal fees. It seems like we're pretty much constantly asking to get legal opinions on things, and I know some of them are certainly necessary, but I think that to be able to get legal fees on the same issue, over and over is really quite a waste of money. I think we could probably be just a little more, I don't know what the right word is, but just a little more careful about how often we are asking for legal opinions on things, because that's a lot of $50,000 for that is a lot of money.
That's a good point. So when we're at the council table and somebody says, hey, we should ask legal about that, we'll have to keep each other on check. I think some of those have been with, we've only just started to review some of the bylaws, but recognizing that probably every year we'll do a couple, but I don't know if they'll exceed this amount of money. But this goes to some other things too, so that is definitely something to be aware of. Sorry?
I just want to add for context in the legal review for a bylaw, it runs anywhere, depending on how complicated it is, but it runs anywhere from $5,000 to, I would say, $8,000 or $9,000 review per bylaw.
Mm-hmm. And another thing to consider when we review our strategic plan is how we're going to go about this. Under the admin and office expenses, line item 2330, where it's office equipment maintenance, is this computers? Or what is the office equipment?
No, we have a separate line for computers.
Right.
It's a computer maintenance. Those are our copiers. That's primarily them.
Okay. So if we were to turn the page under facilities maintenance, and it has municipal hall maintenance, what are these costs? We didn't spend all of this. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question before we turn the page?
Sure.
It has been brought up several times in the budget for FOI. What is the committee
Okay.
statement?
Yes. So we have a projected 25,000.
That's correct. So just received an invoice this week was for about $3,500. So We still have a month to go, that being for December. So 25,000 is very much available.
Mhm. I would suggest that we leave it where it is right now. Committee, what's your thought? Councillor?
Well, it's really hard to tell because we just have no idea how many requests, and we don't have any choice. If we get, unfortunately, if we get a request for an FOI, we've got to fulfill it, and it's really unfortunate. I really would ask the community to think twice before doing that, to try to, hopefully that maybe we could clarify some of their concerns before they just jump in. If people are really concerned about the money, maybe they would realize it was how much money those FOIs really do cost.
Okay, so I would say probably the answer is we leave it where it is for now. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So turning to facilities maintenance. So the municipal home maintenance. We have some explanation on that, Mr. Husky, please. This would be like the moss on the roof. Thing, or?
I'll have to check what the exact items that's being charged at GL, but that is definitely meant for just general hall maintenance.
Yeah, and then if we go down further where there's the one-times, there's a number of these that will be addressed when we come to this again. I know the iPads for council was never purchased. The hydrologist, only part of that has been spent. The one-time heat pump, well, we can see that only part of that was spent. Well, a good chunk of it was. And we will be needing something like that for this building. Yes.
On the iPad, they are being ordered, so they will be delivered soon.
Okay, thank you. So under the minor admin capital expenses for office furniture and equipment, is this an area that I know we've talked about getting more mics and getting them to be Wi-Fi, so we can not have all the tied-in wires here. Is this an area where that would fit?
That is,
Okay.
yeah, but this 5,000 does not include that because we don't have the quotes yet.
Right. But given that we only spent 1,300 last year, I'm not sure what it was on, but 5,000 might still work. But again, it will depend on the cost of those. Okay. Any other comments, committee? Can we move on to the fire department page? Yeah. Any comments from the committee on this? As a page or as a section? So we talked about at the very beginning here, at the last page, some of the increases are the firefighter allowance has been, there's an ask for that to be increased. So that's, as was explained at the last meeting, it says based on the call-out pay to be increased per hour. Halloween event, there's no cost here. I'm not sure why, or if that's because maybe the costs of that come out of the MVFS allowance. I don't really know where the money comes for it.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, Chief, please.
It comes partially out from the society funding that you provide here, and also probably out of the fire department, kitchen or building. So like lights, the upcoming breakfast, part of that will come from the fire department, kitchen, some of it will come from the society budget. It's just kind of a joint thing.
Fireworks.
Pardon?
No, we didn't, but there was hot dogs and candy and glow sticks.
So there usually is money in there.
Yes.
Toward fireworks, right?
Yeah, but I had wondered if it came out of the allowance, which is what we also finance here, so.
And there isn't, just a note on that topic, there is no fund there is no budget in there for 2024 fireworks, so that'll be the council decision if you want to do that or not.
Okay. Any other comments, Kenny, on that page for now? Okay, turn the page. Anything here? These are more fixed costs with heating and hydro and equipment. Okay, no comments? No, okay, policing. Policing is pretty much fixed. There's not too much we can do with policing. Agree? Bylaw enforcement. We've already heard that there's going to be increase in wages here. Again, out of our control. We do have bylaw legal here. 80,000 was what was projected. We only spent 30 last year, so you can see that it has been reduced to 40 already. Everyone okay with this? Okay. And then the next page is just a repeat. Page 16, 15 and 16 are exactly the same. So we'll move on to page 17, building department. Yes, Councillor.
Sorry, can I just go back to the bylaw enforcement? I just wondered if you could ask about the bylaw legal, which is projected to be $80,000.
That was projection for last year. This year it's 40, because we only spent 30 last year. This year.
Yeah, I just wondered if there's more, if there's more
No, there isn't any
coming in.
No,
So-
it's a particular.
So the 29, not 75, that is the total. Okay, thanks.
Thank you for that clarification.
Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, through
Mayor.
the chair, to Ms. Tarnowski, do these figures take into consideration the bylaw increases that we were notified of the other day? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so on the building department, page 17, I note contracted services. In the budget, we have 5,000, but we spent year-to-date so far is over 12,000. Ms. Tarnowski, can you brief us on this, please?
So the budget for the engagement of a contract building official to review the bylaw. So that's including the 12,005. That appears to be just a coding error that needs to be corrected.
Okay. Any more comments on that page? Okay. Emergency services. Under the emergency measures for year-to-date of 2023 compared to 2024 is quite a significant difference between them. Like the year-to-date, there's 4 of them there. The first 4 is quite low compared to the 1,000, 4,000 mark. Is there an explanation for the discrepancy?
I'll have to defer that question to the chief.
Chief?
I don't exactly, I have to go back and look at the line item for this, but
Okay.
the unfortunate part of this is that because the community, all the different programs work so connected, sometimes it would be nice if we could review, we talked about this kind of at the beginning here, if we could just lump all those into one, because they do all just work together, so it's not like it's really hard to refine separate. So you see how it appears to me anyway that the EOC, the Operations Center budget is quite, over its annual budget allocation, where it should be a bit more averaged out over the other departments. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I suspect that that's probably what's happened, because they just all, it's hard to differentiate all the individual items there.
Okay.
And some of those line items can go.
Ms. Charnowski?
Just a reminder as well to the committee that we are looking at the budget for departments. If we look at emergency services, there may be discrepancy between the actuals and budget, as Chief Dunlop has indicated at the end of the day. So if it's even, could be some difference or errors in coding, but at the end of the day, if you look at the bottom line total for the program, the focus should be on, is it under budget or is it over budget as a program as a whole.
But it clearly looks like it's more to date under budget, but I'm just wondering, is it valuable for us to actually cut this in half? Or should we review how these line items actually work?
I'll have to defer that to the chief.
She's giving me facial gestures over here.
Sorry. I guess if you look at the budget for 2023 is 10,700 for all those combined, and year to date we've spent 10,158. So we're just underneath the budget. So is that what you're looking at there? And so while I appreciate that it looks like we're really low on some of those, I think that it's just all gone into the EOC budget. So across the board, are we looking at am I looking at the right line?
You are, and so that begs the question, should we actually merge some of those so that they're not so specific? And like the Emergency Operations Center is pretty general, and that's where the big boost is compared to what's in the first four lines.
Correct, because a lot of what we do just falls under the Emergency Operations Center is basically all of those components. So that's a discussion that I can have with the CEO. Sure.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
As long as we're not talking about cutting the overall budget.
No,
Okay.
No, I was just looking at, instead of $200 and it's up to $4,000. I see what you're talking about down there, but I'm bringing it up because the public will be sure to pinpoint on certain things, not necessarily this budget, but it'll be other things. And so and I know that it's painful kind of going through this, not line by line, but I'm hoping it's preventative in some respect. So it would be helpful if we could make it more comprehensible for all people. Okay, any other comments on this page, committee? And so moving on to the transportation services, page 21. Ms. Charnowski.
May I address one of the questions that were brought up by a member of the public about roads versus wages?
Yes.
Something that. So I'd like to remind the committee again that roads are capital expenses, so we cannot trade road expenses for wage expenses. So those two are not interchangeable. And I definitely will not recommend reducing the road maintenance operating expenses so that we can reduce overall tax impact to compensate for increasing wages. Then.
Councillor Gray, do you have a comment?
That sounds imminently sensible. Sorry, that sounds eminently sensible. We had a question from the public about the bridge expense contracted services and bridge expense vehicle costs. Could we get clarification on that? And you mentioned bridge inspections. I think that's answered. That's for all of our bridges. The other ones, I guess, they're very small amounts of money. But.
Okay, so how public works charges work is every time the crew does a certain project, they get charged to the particular project. So in this case, every time they work on the bridge, we charge the wages to there under bridge expense, excuse me, as well as for the use of our equipment like our trucks and things like that. vehicles, so those all get charged to particular project in terms of their wages as well as vehicle charges. So that's the explanation for those two items.
Councillor?
I noticed that in 24 under consulting fees, that we have an amount of $38,400. And I was wondering for some clarification on that, and if there's a way we could just drop that for this year, coming year.
That was wasn't that the engineer's fee?
Is it?
Yeah, that was what we talked about earlier.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Is the price for engineers are getting to be higher than what we currently have.
Right, okay, I thought that was, last year we had discussed having someone, a consultant, look at the roads, and I thought maybe that was that fee, but that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I wondered that as well. Okay, so in looking at the year-to-date compared to the 2024 on page 22 of the same department, looks like we did very well with our contracted services, at least with the ditching and the shouldering, mowing, and so on. And I realized that most of that was because it was a one pass, not doing it twice, or maybe it's something we need to review. I don't know. It's not a field of my expertise. So I do appreciate that we kept under budget on that. We'd also talked last year about doing a pilot project of some ditches with vegetation. I would like the committee to think about, and I don't know if we actually allocated this last year, but to think about maybe specifically designating some ditches and watching and seeing how that works, and then continuing with our program as usual on some other ones. So it's something to consider. Ms. Charnowski, you have a comment?
Yes, so there's a couple of comments, one in relating to ditching. The reason that the actuals for this year is so low is that we still have not resolved or where we are going to deposit all those materials that's being removed from the ditches. So as it stands right now, all those materials that are removed from the ditches have to be hauled across Malahat to the Nanaimo area for disposal. So that's one of the reasons why it's so low. And the other part on leaving, excuse me, the ditches and culverts wild, I would strongly recommend that we get assessment done by qualified engineer, because the concern is that we still need the culverts and ditches to be able to perform what it's meant to do at allowing the water flow and not impede the water flow and causing other unintended consequences such as flooding and overflowing. So I'm not saying that's not a good or bad idea, but I'm just suggesting that we get it properly assessed to see how viable that is.
Councillor?
As far as just a comment on the natural, leaving the swales, which is great, and it is very nice to do environmentally rather than digging them out. However, there is one note that it doesn't come without cost. So if you just leave them in a vegetative state, that's fine, but it still requires a lot of handwork to go in and clear certain things out, to, as Mr. Dusky was saying, to allow the water to flow properly and to not block the culverts. So it requires quite a bit of manpower to maintain live swales as well. So it's a great idea, but it isn't going to be any cheaper.
Okay, so yeah, learning more about that for sure helps. I know I visited the Royal Bay area, and they do have an interesting bioswale ditch. I remember when it got put in, but I didn't realize what it was all for exactly. But I watched it after some rains about a month ago, and it was working quite well. There is an element of maintenance, but the way it's been designed wouldn't be as difficult. We don't have that set up just yet here, but not all ditches have culverts, so maybe those are some of the ones we can consider as the pilot that was suggested. But the depositing of these ditchings is, as I recall from last year, is quite expensive. Not just in the travel, but it can be contaminated material, so there's some concern about how, what, when, where, all those sorts of things. Okay. Any other comments for the transportation services budget? Ms. Tarnowski?
There's a question, what is committee's wish in terms of investigating or not investigating the natural culverts or ditches? Would you like me to go ahead and arrange that? I would just like to know what your wishes are.
Marilyn?
Well, it might be a cost saving, but I think it lines up with our strategic objectives to do things more environmentally. Virtually anything they take out of the ditch is deemed contaminated, and that's why it has to be removed and stored or disposed of at a particular facility. So I would like to see that. I think it's a grand idea.
I certainly would like to learn more about if at the culvert openings, if those are what we maintain, and maybe the ditches are a little bit different. I don't know how much erosion there is. Is this something maybe we could refer to MEAS to investigate for us?
I think we're talking about an engineer to look at it, so we don't have that. And me ask, I guess what we're asking here, or I'm hearing from our CFO, is do we want to get a price from an engineering firm that we could put in the budget?
That's correct. So if you would like to investigate it, then I would like the committee to give me that direction, and I can proceed and get a price from an engineer to do the assessment, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, maybe you'd like to?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to get a price. We can see if we can manage it this year or not, because we've been talking about this for several years now in doing it, and I think it would be a good idea just to find out the ins and outs of exactly how it would work.
Mary, will you have a comment?
I wonder if you start in Colwood, maybe they could point you which way to go in terms of who they hired, and maybe they can even pass on some of their information. They're great at sharing their resources.
At least we get a price and then decide whether or not we can actually afford it, or weigh out the costs of that, and then the disposal of the ditchings and the labor involved too. Okay. So is that all you need, Ms. Thompson? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on the transportation services right now? Okay. Planning and environment services. And recreation and cultural service page on page 25. Ms. Janowski?
I just have a recommendation to make on the planning legal, just based on the invoice that I received today for the housing question legal fees. It was approximately $5,000, so I would suggest that we increase, that line item.
This is on the planning.
That's correct, on page 23.
Okay. Which, the planning legal, that's that line?
Yes.
Okay. So you're suggesting we go beyond 12,000?
That's correct. Just given that just the one invoice on housing questions,
Okay.
it was almost $5,000.
So are you suggesting we go up to 20,000 instead of 12 here?
I think that would be a good start, 20.
20, okay. Any comments on the recreation cultural, Marilyn?
Just back on the planning and environmental services, through you, the chair, to Ms. Tarnowski. Why is carbon tax offset 6,000 an expense?
So that's the expense that we transferred to the reserve. So it's just showing as an expense because it transferred to the reserve. So we didn't spend on anything, but we did transfer it.
Okay, and school site page 27. So there was a query earlier in public participation about the $101,000 revenue, and if we go down, we see actually the cost is $166,000. So it's not sustaining itself. Is there any other comments that anyone wants to make on that, or some clarity maybe for that query that we had earlier? Mr. Wilson?
I could answer the question from earlier question from a member of the public.
Okay.
So the MACA rent is the rent that we actually receive. Now the reason is not $1 because MACA does pay share of a common cost allocation, so the common being common areas, so they do pay for that. So those are the actual rent that we receive from MACA, as well as our other two commercial tenants, which is shown on other rent. The line's called other rent.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just comment here. We didn't talk about it the other day during the visioning exercise, but if you look at the cold hard numbers, you can see the value that we have in the commercial renters that are occupy the school, or an area of the school. They're important to our bottom line, and I think well respected in the community.
Ms. Tarnowski?
If I can just refer back to my earlier comment about adding additional expenses for the maintenance of the school. It's something it is imperative we look at that. It is the time for us to seriously develop a plan for the overall maintenance, and we definitely need to set some budget aside for that. Having said that, a number it would be just guessing on my part, but I think it's imperative that we put additional budget for the maintenance of our assets.
What number are you thinking of realistically? Double?
At least. Yeah. At least $20,000. And that's not taking into consideration of having not necessarily full-time personnel, but some sort of payment for doing the bookings, checking the space, and that's additional to just the general maintenance that I was referring to.
So that's a line item of its own. Is that right?
We could create that's a line item on its own, or it could be lumped in with other contracted services.
So, but we do have like grounds maintenance, which would be like ice and snow kind of stuff too, not just mowing the field. But then we have building maintenance. It has a line item of 30,000 there. Treatment plant maintenance. So there are some breakouts already. So.
But if you look at building maintenance, we're almost at the actuals. We're almost at $30,000, and we know there are several outstanding issues that have not been addressed in terms of maintenance. So I wouldn't suggest going to. I was thinking of the $10,000. Where's that? I'm not seeing the $10,000 now, and where that's stuck in my head. So
maybe the leasing agent fee.
Yeah, that's right, because that was reallocated. So if we take that 11,003 out of the equation, that leaves us $16,000 for building maintenance. And given the fact that currently for this year, it is sitting at almost $23,000, I'm going to suggest that $30,000 is, I'm sorry, $26,000 is insufficient. I could definitely go away and do a little bit more detailed estimates on the maintenance that's required for the school and come back with a figure that I will note on the next revision. Does that sound like a...
That sounds like a good idea. Any other comments on this, Councillor?
Yeah, I'd actually like to see a combined, as I mentioned before. I'd like to have a line item in there for possibly either a contracted or a staff person that would be part-time, responsible for the maintenance and the bookings. I think we're pretty desperate to have both. So I don't know, just to get an idea of the projected cost of someone like that.
I agree with you that having some idea after listening to what a lot of asks were last week at the visioning, the feedback that we got, and then look at what our realistic costs might be, even though it's not going to be fully booked right now, but we need a starting place so we can go back to the public with some information.
Because too, we're hoping to really increase revenue through the use of that gym.
That's right.
And so I think that I think the revenue would easily offset the cost of having somebody paid to run it, because right now it's just so haphazard. I think having someone that can really organize bookings and keep it, make it a real viable building would be really helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other comments on the budget? So that pretty much brings us to the end of the package. Before I open it up to the public.
Yeah, we had a couple of questions from the public that we could probably address before we move on. The offer salary for the new CAO, the moving expenses, and the transition costs were the three questions.
I can answer one of them. I do not have any idea for the other two, as those numbers have not been communicated to me. So wages that's included in the budget is based on my current wage, so I cannot say one way or another what the new CAO will be has been offered. Same goes for the relocation payments. I have no information on that.
Marilyn?
Yeah, the relocation, it's up to 10,000 depending on receipts and expenditures, and the wage will be the same as the current interim CAO.
Okay.
If I may, was it not $7,000 for moving expenses?
Seven, perhaps.
Does that answer the questions?
I think so. If there's, have a number for transition cost. And then the other, I think we've covered off most of the other questions that were asked.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have the pink to look at. I just want to know, we've been here for almost 2 hours, and we have what's calculated as 14% tax increase, and the twos and fros. This may not be correct, but I believe we have reduced the budget by 0.25%. By going this way line by line or sheet by sheet. And I would ask maybe the next, I'm not sure how we want to do the budget, but I'm still pushing for the idea that we talk about the services that we're receiving and whether we want more or less services, and then leave our staff to figure out the cost of those changes and see whether or not we can't come up with better numbers. I'm not happy with the 14% increase, but I realize that's tied to the services and the initiatives that we've put forward. At the last meeting, I was curious when people started saying, well, what about this and what about that? We should add this in, add that. And I didn't know that's what we were scheduled to do. But I do have a list of different items that might go in the budget. I don't have numbers for each of them, but I can work on that if that's the process we're in. I'm not entirely sure. Some will be one time and some are ongoing. And an example would be the climate action plan implementation. There's some numbers that I can bring forward at a future meeting when we're ready for that.
Councillor sorry.
Look, I know you mentioned this before, but I'm still not sure if it's possible, is that if there are any budget items, either operational or capital, that could qualify to be taken out of the Growing Communities Fund, things that we need that could reduce the amount in the budget, that could be transferred over to that Growing Communities Fund.
Ms. Tarnowski.
We cannot use the Communities Fund to fund operations, so that is out of the question.
But it could be capital.
Yes, it's all meant for capital. So we do have a meeting scheduled or plan anyways for January to have that discussion about what is council and the community's wish. How do we wish to spend the $2.4 million? Just as a reminder that individually, I know if I had $2.4 million, that's a lot of money. But in terms of paying for asset, that is not a whole lot of money. So just to keep that in mind, I'm fully aware that there has been a few ideas suggested, but $2.4 million is not going to get us very much of capital assets. So.
Councillor Gray.
There's one other point that maybe isn't in my list of priorities or ideas, but we did get a presentation from Mr. last June about reserves, and the notion that came up there was that we're not putting enough money aside to replace our assets going forward. And I recall that we kicked around the idea, well, that's a valuable thing to do, to make sure we're putting aside enough money. And we haven't discussed that today, but I think it's something that should come into our budget at a certain point. And we'll look at those figures again, and maybe we've done some work on that.
So if I may, it's according to policy, we discussed the reserve transfers and balances in June. So that is, it's discussed after we've done the budget, and we look at that in June. But, and I do agree, if you recall, when I made a presentation on our asset replacement funding, the gap is just going to grow as our assets get continue to age. So that is definitely an area that I would recommend that the committee look at seriously, is taking a look at the funding level that's being currently transferred to fund our replacement of our assets.
Okay, well, I'll be sure to bring that up in June.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to open this up to the public, as we have done in the past. It's not on the agenda, but if anyone from in the gallery would like to speak, this would be the time to speak, please.
Barb Sawatsky, Kavir Road. I just have a couple of suggestions. I echo Councillor Epp about the people in the community who might come and entertain for a volunteer night. Perhaps get in touch with Jackie Anderson, who runs the farmers market, because they have entertainers there every week during the season. They don't get paid, but they have their open guitar cases or whatever that people can make donations to, so I don't think we have to pay entertainers, and they don't have to be from Machosen. The second one we seem to spend a lot of time talking about is dog poop. There's no point in putting up teachable signs. People know they shouldn't let their dog shit on the beach. They know they shouldn't let the dog bags be thrown into the bushes or accumulate beside the containers. People will leave garbage, they will leave mattresses leaning up against. It's just a waste of time. However, I did post a picture on Facebook a little while ago. Sometimes if you use humor, you can get to people. And this one showed a person bent over at the waist, practicing downward dog. And he had a pooper scooper in his hand and there was a steaming pile beside it, asking them to practice downward dog. So that's a suggestion. And I don't know if you're going to do anything with that pink, but I would still like an answer to my question number 5. How much are the Hildebrands being paid?
Ms. Tarnowski.
I'll be able to cover that answer. I received the invoice earlier this week, and it was just approximately $1,900. So it's 19 and change.
And what was that for?
That was for the time that is spent here.
That one meeting?
That's correct.
That's dreadful. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Jennifer Burgess, 3837 Duke Road. I guess since I came here, I thought I should say a few comments. Although I love watching you on YouTube as well. I noticed that under general government, you skipped right over advertising/newsletter. And that's a massive little increase of $5,000. And I just wondered what on earth you were thinking of doing in that area that you haven't done before. That was just one of the pieces that I noted. The bylaw legal, I was glad to see that you caught that one and gave it a nice little chop. The question I have is about the blank line where the social fund of the fire hall continues to support a lot of things for us in the community. I'm curious if someone provides funds to the social group with the fire hall, is it considered charitable? Because funds to the municipality are charitable. So I just wondered if someone would like to look into that. If it's a fund, is it a fund of the municipality? Then donations to it could be considered charitable. Just an interesting question I had. We certainly are very appreciative of the fund that they do use for so many things for us. I guess one other question was, it's not really a budget question, but you did a bylaw reading first and second of bylaw 693, and I was wondering when the rest of that is proceeding. That was an amendment bylaw that you did related to ALR and the village center. So I believe it's stuck in readings 1 and 2 and not proceeded yet to another level of reading. I think that's all I have for the moment. A few interesting questions for you, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Mr. Nussey, can you explain the council newsletter line item?
So we do have statutory advertising that we have to pay for as municipalities. Every time we have any there are statutory things. Now, I believe those increase in that is because we are getting more electronic subscriptions to online newspapers. I certainly have seen quite an increase of those coming through. I'm just looking to see that's page.
It's page 9. legislative services. So we've allocated 6,000 for this year, and we spent 36 to date, 3,600. So it's 1,000 more than what we've had previously.
I'm just looking to see the planning there, because I know we will have increased advertising for planning. I'm just checking to see if there's some planning advertising or if that's a line item. That can certainly be reduced to be reduced to $5,000 if it's just for advertising now. Saying that we just, as long as we do not continue to increase subscribing to news, additional electronic news agencies, outlets, then we can reduce that to $5,000.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I think we've tried to answer everybody's questions today, but we do have left questions on the pink here, and I can kick it off. Question number 1, is council not expected to be at arm's length when contracts are awarded? I think the answer is we are expected to be at arm's length. Should not be involved in contracts. I don't know the answer to the next questions.
Okay, so
Why was the contract not advertised?
Okay, so the other thing that we all have a copy of is our procurement policy. And if you look on the second page where it says this number 3, statements of the policy. And 3A, B, and C can answer some of those questions. So 3A says expenditures up to $1,000. That one doesn't really apply here, or it could. It says best value effort, perform catalog and or advertising comparisons. 3B, expenditures in excess of $1,000 but less than $10,000. In this policy it says best value effort needs to be documented and signed off by the authorized signing authority, which is our CAO. And 3C, expenditures in excess of $10,000 but less than $25,000. Those would require competitive quotes. So I don't know if that answers any of those questions, but that is part of our policy for.
Yeah, that's helpful. I guess the issue is, where decisions are made versus who authorizes things, and it seems that this one's a bit backwards for a cost of almost $2,000 for a single meeting. It seems like a lot of money, and we avoid those kinds of things otherwise. How did it actually happen?
Ms. Chomsky?
I can provide background information in terms of just a staff's perspective. So Ms. Hanson and myself were copied on an email from the mayor to the Hildebrands in May. And in the content of the email, there's reference to some documentation that the mayor was supposed to send to Ms. Hildebrand. And then the communication continued after that, but either in writing from the mayor or in person, to have the Hildebrands come and assist at the visioning workshop when the time was right. So what staff did was, as once we set the time for the visioning workshop, I then reached out to Ms. Hildebrand to talk about the hourly charge, as that hadn't been discussed from the communications between the mayor and herself earlier in the year. So what we did is I firmed up the hourly rate and organized what we did is organize for them to attend this workshop. So it wasn't it was an initiative that I had initiated to engage them for the workshop.
So in between the initial emails of interest, we had a telephone conversation. Ms. Hanson and I had a telephone conversation with the Hansons to find out what kind of services they had to offer. And based on that conversation, I thought it was a good idea. Ms. Hanson thought it was a good idea to at least explore what they had to offer to kickstart discussing the school site.
Councillor Gray, do you have any more queries on that?
Yeah, it just seems to me that we've had this a number of times now in recent weeks, the role of the board, ourselves, and the role of staff. And I think we need to stick at our role as the board and not get involved in operations, including letting contracts or choosing people or that sort of thing. It just, for me, I guess I'm new to being a politician, but if we turn that and use that language, the politician choosing contractors, a politician setting things up, it just doesn't wash well for me, and it doesn't seem to be our role at this table. And I would like us to basically cease and desist those sorts of activities. And if we think we need a facilitator, in my view, we would turn to staff and say, could you please find somebody? We can offer names, but it's up to the staff to make the decisions as to who we hire, who we work with, and the nature of how much they're paid, all those kinds of things. I don't see us, that the council should be involved in.
Well,
In fact, I think those are the rules. We're not supposed to be involved.
So it does sound like that's what was happening. There was an exploration of some individuals to be involved with something with Ms. Hanson, and then I guess it went on to Ms. Tarnowski and decided
If I may, just point of order, one of the things in our code of conduct is that we don't want to interpret what other people say. What they say is what they said. Assumptions will not be made about what a member means when they speak. So let's not, I think we should be careful about summarizing what other people said today at the table on the other day.
Well, I don't think that I was summarizing. I think I was saying that what Mayor Little said is exactly what was just stated now. If there's an idea, let's account that to staff. I mean, if I have an idea, I'll say, hey, what about this? Can you give me some guidance on it? And so that sounds, isn't that not what that was?
No, I disagree.
Okay.
Throughout the conversation, it has always been the Hildebrands were going to do the contract and facilitate the workshop. So staff were not given the opportunity or asked to go and explore and find different facilitators and check out the qualifications. The conversation has been the Hildebrands will be doing the workshops.
I just want to say the Hildebrands seem like lovely folks. That's not the issue.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing none. We have finished with the agenda, and I'd like to have a motion to adjourn, please. Motion by Councillor Epp, second by Councillor Gray, because he wants to leave too. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.